Welcome to the walkabout through George Washington's forest. Hello, I'm George Washington and I'm going to be your guide. Many people are aware that I live not far from here at Mount Vernon, but what they're not aware of is that I also owned about 1,200 acres of land in part of what you're now calling Arlington. We're right now at our first stop, of course, at the WalkArlington Cemetery. Later in this tour, we're going to see the home in which the Balls and the Carlyns lived. Well, here we are at our second stop. This is the property of Mr. Moses Ball, and this plaque gives information on that. He and I surveyed this area together because our properties joined in 1785. As you can see, the neighborhood has changed. The horses weren't as fast as they are today. So let's go on and take a look at that property. So here we are at what's referred to as the Moses Ball Spring. Allegedly, this is where I got a drink of water, although I don't recall that, but definitely would have allowed my horse to have a drink. Well, as we proceed down the Carlyn Springs Road, we're coming to the next stop on our tour. Make sure you don't miss this turn. It's the Long Branch Nature Center. When I purchased this property, the primary purpose was to use it as what we called a woodlot. Like this poplar here would be useful for a number of things. The trees, because it was so heavily forested, were used for fencing, for housing, for the slaves' houses, for firewood, and also for sale to people who also needed wood. So owning what we called woodlots was very important because wood was the primary material for everything, including fires. Well, here we are where the Long Branch and 4 Mile Run converge, and it was also the location where we had a great white oak tree here, which we used as a marker for surveys. Now, this is where the property of Mr. John Ball and his brother Moses Ball met. A little farther downstream was where my property began. And all of this was used as a reference point for determining who owned what land. Let's go on to our next stop. We're now on my property, which I agreed to purchase in 1775, but was unable to take possession until after the war. As I look at these magnificent trees and all the foliage, it looks like a lot like it did when I surveyed this property. We're still walking along 4 Mile Run, and right above us is Columbia Pike. Right behind me is where an old mill stood that had belonged to my step-grandson and namesake, George Washington Parke Custis. The mill was destroyed many years ago, and you can see some of the rubble from it. Now that we've crossed Columbia Pike, I'd like to point out the Arlington Mill. This gives a whole history of the mill that we were talking about. And now we're going to take a pleasant walk on what was the old W&OD railroad trail. Of course, as you probably know, W&OD stands for Washington and Old Dominion. This trail is built on where the railroad used to go through this area. We're now leaving the W&OD trail. We're going to cross its converging with the 4 Mile Run trail. Well, we're coming to the end of the trail portion of our little walk, and this leads us right into the Glen Carlyn neighborhood. Here's something I recognize from my time, and as a matter of fact, it looks like someone I know. Coming upon one of my favorite stops now, the John Ball House, which was built around 1750, more or less. The house was some years later bought by Mr. William Carlyn, who was one of my tailors. This house is open for visitors every Saturday from 1 to 4 o'clock. As you can see, the house was originally a log cabin, and clay was used in between each log to keep out the cold and the rain. And then the clapboard was added after that. So this is typical construction for the period. Now we're going to go in the house, and you'll notice that the doorway is not very high. I'm definitely going to have to duck to go in. Certainly not Mount Vernon, but this was typical of a small farmer's home. Doorways and ceilings were not very high at all, simply because it helped keep the heat in the room. Had nothing to do with the height of the people. This would be the extent of the original house, which would be about, looks like 15 feet by 15 feet. And then there would be a loft above where, of course, the sleeping quarters would be. This room was not added until sometime later. This was the original house, everything that you're looking at here. But now we're at the front of the house, and you can see what's been added onto it in the 1880s. On the end, you can see the original house that Mr. Ball had. We're now coming to our last stop, and we're coming up on the Glen Carlyn branch of the Arlington Public Library System. We're going to see something very special inside. And now we come upon the surprise in the library. Isn't this a fantastic thing? This is you remember we visited the monument to where a tree stood, where I had used it as a marker for when I did my survey. That tree came down around 1900, and here we've saved a section of that tree, and it's for anyone to see and touch in this library. Isn't that a phenomenal thing? Well, here we are back to where we started. I hope you enjoyed the tour as I enjoyed going along with you. It was only a couple of miles after all. If you'd like to visit our website, it's at www.walkarlington.com. On there, you can print out maps and a text version of this tour. You will also find references to other great tours here in Arlington. Thank you.